Hello everyone, welcome again to Social Psychology, Psychology 346, and today we're going to be talking about self-awareness. Now, the self is a very interesting concept within social psychology. Typically, when you think about social psychology, you think about interacting with other people, and the self doesn't necessarily fit this bill. But the self can be an object of attention. It can be something that we, as people, pay attention to. Thinking about oneself can be aversive to some people. Looking at one's photo or looking in the mirror can be a little bit off-putting. Understanding and attending to the self can vary from species to species. For example, we see that certain primates, dolphins, elephants, for example, are some of the species that are actually able to pay attention to themselves. And we see that attending to the self can vary across situations. For example, we might think more about ourselves after seeing ourselves in the mirror or seeing a camera. Alternatively, there are some people who tend to focus more on themselves, who might think about themselves more often. And we can understand these people through what's known as self-awareness theory. More often than not, we don't tend to think about ourselves, but sometimes we interact with things in the environment that can encourage us to think about ourselves. For example, mirrors. When we do think about ourselves, we tend to compare what we're doing at the moment to what we think we should be doing, or what we ought to be doing, or what we would ideally like to be doing. Oftentimes, we'll then, after we become aware of ourselves, change our behavior to try and meet whatever standards we're trying to compare ourselves with. Sometimes that means we end up being dissatisfied with ourselves because our behaviors are not living up to our standards. So for example, if we see a donut and we become self-aware, we may either, walk past the donut to get a healthy snack rather than eating a donut. Or if we find that we end up eating the donut and we become self-aware, we may be dissatisfied with ourselves and feel bad about ourselves. And dissatisfaction can be quite painful. For example, we might become nervous or angry at oneself after thinking about and comparing our current self to our ideal self. And oftentimes when we feel dissatisfied with ourselves, we tend to escape into things that make us feel better. Sometimes that's forgetting about ourselves completely, maybe by watching a movie, a television show, playing a video game, etc., trying to escape the self. Sometimes that can be escaping through binging on other substances, such as food, such as smoking, such as alcohol, etc. In worst case scenarios, that means actually doing harm to oneself. If maybe we become aware of ourselves and we just can't stand the thought of not living up to our own standards, or maybe the standards of others, sometimes this can be the impetus for people who commit suicide. So understanding how we interact with ourselves and how we understand ourselves and how we compare our current selves to our ideal selves is extremely important to research. Sometimes comparing ourselves to our ideal selves or being aware of ourselves can encourage positive behaviors rather than negative behaviors. For example, becoming aware of ourselves, maybe by looking at oneself in the mirror, can discourage us from cheating. So for example, if for a study that was conducted asked participants to complete a test, complete a problem-solving task in a room by themselves. Half of them had a mirror, half of them didn't. The individuals were told that after a bell rings, you're supposed to stop, and then after a while, the experimenter will come in the room and take your exam. Well, participants had some time after the bell rang to continue working, and the researchers found that participants who had a mirror in the room decided to cheat a lot less. They spent a lot less time after the bell working because they were more self-aware. We see a similar finding occur in a different study examining stealing, and we find that self-awareness discourages stealing. For example, in this study, during Halloween, a bowl of candy was placed outside the front door of a house with a sign that said, "Please only take one piece." When children went up, during half of the time, a mirror was in front of the bowl, the other half of the time a mirror wasn't. And the researchers basically found that children tended to only take one piece when there was a mirror there compared to when there wasn't. So children became self-aware, realized their own behaviors, compared them to their possible ideal selves or what they ought to be doing, and they decided to only take that one piece. So positive behaviors can arise from being aware of oneself. Additionally, comparing your current behaviors to your ideal behaviors can help with the pursuit of your goals. It can help motivate you. It can also help us identify whether or not we're meeting the goals that we've set for each other. We're examining where we are along whatever goal we might have compared to where we want to be. We can also examine, are we making enough progress? Are we making steady enough progress towards this goal? Or do we need to kind of up our game and make more progress? So it's nice, helps us pursue goals, helps us get motivated towards what we want to do, and more importantly, who we want to be as a person. So that's all I have today. Thank you for your time and attention. I will see you next time.